You're listening to the Physio Matters podcast in association with rehabmypatient.com, and this is session 90. Welcome back to Physio Matters podcast. I'm still Jack Chew, and these landmarks, 90 episodes, but I mean, it's all rubbish really compared to the big 100. I think that's the thing. It used to matter, didn't it? Like these things, you get another year under your belt and stuff, but that's 90 consecutive months. It's cool, but it's all about the big 100 now, isn't it? So I need to stop calling things landmarks, I reckon. But welcome back. We've got TherapyLive coming up. I'm recording this. It's next Friday. You'll be getting this, it'll be this Friday by the time you're listening to this, which is cool. So very exciting stuff. 10 streams of education in 10 sessions in each of them, 100 in total. So excited. It's just going to be absolutely belting. Absolute who's who of MSK practice, as well as some of the meatiest topics that will really create another cultural landmark in MSK practice, which we were proud of last year. And also the atmosphere around all of these shows has been phenomenal. Loads of discussion. Really happy and hyped on the chat, Q&A, voting and upvoting. The participation levels has been phenomenal. So yeah, no bystanders at TherapyLive events. So really excited to get going with that again. So this month's episode is actually from the TherapyLive Newscast, where we announced the program for TherapyLive with a little help from some of our friends and speakers from the event. So Rhiannon Griffiths, Claire Robertson, Derek Griffin, Adam Meekins, Jack March and Susie McElroy joined me to discuss what we've got planned, what they're looking forward to, why TherapyLive is important, what other sessions they're looking forward to speaking at, and just generally a bit of their take on all things MSK practice and the digital education space that we now all inhabit. As the world opens back up, we're sort of offering a bit of reflection on this maybe being the last fully virtual conference that even we deliver, which is quite exciting. So I really enjoyed the chat, absolutely brilliant people and some great insights into what we've got in store, as well as a live leak of the program, which now exists in full, of course, at therapy-live.co.uk. You can see the lobby and you can see how you will be able to interact with the site from here on in, all ready and prepped. I'll be honest, if we were delivering the conference tomorrow, it would still run smoothly with that on top of it. That's how confident I can be about all the different tech gremlins that you might have experienced in yesteryear. We've done nothing but practice since, and we think we are sorted. So there's some confidence for you. So please do get your tickets if you haven't already. Mad for you to miss out. It'd be such a shame. The tickets are free, and then you can pay a supplement to then access the recordings after the fact, because 10 streams of education means that you're unlikely to be able to. It would take for a 10 split screen for you to manage to absorb all of it. So I don't think you'd manage that. So if you want to have access to the content after the fact, then yeah, you pay a supplement on purchase, which is discounted at the moment. So please do check out therapy-live.co.uk, and we look forward to seeing you there. A quick word of thanks to our brilliant sponsors, Rehab My Patient, who are back in Physio Matters and TherapyLive once again. They've got some exciting new modules in strength and conditioning, as well as then some ambassador modules from some of our best and brightest speakers from TherapyLive. They'll be announcing that, no doubt, at the big show next week. But yeah, they're absolutely brilliant. If you go to rehabmypatient.com/Physio Matters for your 3-month free trial. If you haven't already taken them up on that, please do. You'll notice that it's the fastest, most intuitive system out there for exercise prescription, and you can even send stuff over to your patients via WhatsApp, which is a lovely feature we've been using recently, so do check them out. rehabmypatient.com/Physio Matters. Welcome to those that are joining us live, but this is also hopefully a one-take wonder straight into the podcast as well, which I imagine is out this weekend. This is the TherapyLive Newscast, and we are announcing today and leaking the whole program. So if you're tuning in live, you're going to get an exclusive look at our 100 session, 10 stream conference that we're boldly delivering in 2 weeks' time tomorrow. On the 11th of June, if you haven't got your ticket yet, please go find that, therapy-live.co.uk. If you haven't got your ticket yet, you're one of very few, because once again, it's proven itself to be popular. And so we're looking forward to joining many of you at that event. Now, fortunately, today I'm joined by 5 of the finest of 150 speakers that are speaking at the event. And I want to talk to them a little bit about what they've got in store, what they're looking forward to outside of their talks, as well as then giving a leak, as I mentioned, to the program in full and explaining just exactly what you're going to need to try and decide on, what you're going to watch, what you're going to have to leave for later. And I'll tell you a little bit about how you can do that as well. So thank you so much to everyone for joining me. And have we got a thumbs up? Are we streaming live? Is that all working okay?
Yeah, seems to be.
Good. And so, yeah, it might well be if you tune into Facebook and stuff and you want to join in and participate. If you've got any questions, then please do let us know. But otherwise, we're going to get stuck in, and I'm going to make sure I stick with our guests. Now, the first on the team sheet is someone that at our last event. So we did a Therapy Live event last year, pulled a rabbit out of the hat, 10 weeks from scratch, standing start, 22,500 people turned up. And took us a bit by surprise, did that. But it went sort of well enough for us to go again. We did a Therapy Live sport event then in November. And then we did a specialized show on pelvic health in March. Now, on that event, there was certainly a standout performer. We've done nothing but had comments and requests for more Rhiannon Griffiths. It's been something that we've had lots of feedback for. And so, first name on the team sheet, admittedly. And so Rhiannon, thanks for joining us. We've never spoken before, but I certainly really enjoyed your talk, and it's certainly something that there was a huge outpouring of support for more content of that persuasion. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a bit about the topic of which you've covered now at the last show, and then what you're going to be covering this time out.
Thank you. Well, that's a real surprise to hear all the great positive feedback. I saw bits of it on Twitter, but never always feeds back. So it's fantastic to hear that it was so well received. So I live in South Wales in Caerphilly, near the Cheese, near the castle. And I'm based and I work in the NHS, and my health board covers the southeast of Wales, so the bit between Bristol and Cardiff, and then up into the valleys a little bit and up towards kind of like Abergavenny. So geographically, we've got a large area that we cover, but it's just a fantastic health board to work for. And I've been a clinical specialist in pelvic health for 6 years. And then I've been in pelvic health itself for 10, 11. In my head, I still only left uni less than 10 years ago. So it's always really thing when I kind of go, I've been a specialist for 10 years. It's like, oh God, no, that's a bit scary. So yeah, last time at the pelvic health podcast symposium thing, I covered MSK and a bit of pelvic health and menopause. And menopause is the main topic, but then all the considerations then really around menopause, its effect on bone, muscle, joints, ligaments, chronic pain, pelvic health. And I tried to cram it all into 30 minutes, which was really, really hard. And managed to do, I think, quite successfully, but so much to cover, and it's such an emerging topic. Well, it's not emerging. Menopause has been happening for years. It's not a new thing, but it seems to be a new thing that we're starting to talk about and understand about, and the importance of it is just magnificent, really. It's just, it affects half the population, either going through it, gone through it, or will be going through it in the future. So there's a lot of people who are affected by it, and then not including kind of like the sisters, the mums, the wives and the aunts and daughters that of the other half of the population who might be going through it kind of like as well. So this time I'm going for a bit of a broader take on menopause and the bigger kind of like implications. So what does it really kind of like mean, in terms of workforce, dementia, incontinence a little bit, or MSK kind of like considerations as well, but kind of like more of a broader scope on it rather than getting down into the nitty gritty of it all, I think is where I'm going to go. Because there's just so much to cover and it's really hard.
Our pelvic health stream, I understand, yeah? Not pelvic health, public health.
Public health.
I knew I was going to make that mistake. Public health this time, public health last time. Yeah, I think the way in which it seemed to really like the touch paper last time was because it's something that we all know increasingly of its importance. We witness those clinical patterns, and yet I don't know. It's funny. There's some taboo. There's there's some just us bottling it generally. There's the mystery. There's so many things that are unknown. You don't want to over attribute, but then similarly, it's something that's clearly a key factor. So thank you for sort of making sure you sort of covered that in such a way that made it so accessible. Everyone felt like their guard was sort of dropped, and everyone was open to the fact that they definitely need not neglect those factors and features anymore. And so definitely I could so understand when we heard all the noise and support for that talk, went and watched it and could so understand as to why it was popular. So I'm really glad you could join us again. We'll definitely double back around, no doubt, and chat some more. A bit of a veteran of Therapy Live these days is Mr. Meekins. He certainly joined us pretty much at every show, but for the pelvic health one. I think we'll give you a brief rest for that one. But certainly now coming up for your third Therapy Live, and you're talking about all things shoulders once again, this time dyskinesia. So tell us a little bit about what you've got in store for us, as well as, if you could, some reflections on your previous Therapy Live experiences. Only good ones, please.
Okay, well, yeah, I'll give you the tainted versions later on, then maybe about my experiences elsewhere. But no, yeah, thanks for inviting me back. It's always nice to be invited back to conferences. Must mean I've done something right, or who knows, maybe not, as the case may be. Maybe it's just for comedic effect that you've invited me back again. But no, I'm going to be talking about, again, hopefully the last time I'm going to do a talk on scapular dyskinesis, because it is a topic that I get quite frustrated and bored about talking about. It is one that is still prevalent in discussions that I have with clinicians about, its relevance, is it important, isn't it important? So hopefully this is going to be the definitive final talk on scapular dyskinesis ever. And we're going to hopefully draw a line underneath this, and we are going to be moving on, and we're going to be focusing on other things that are far more important than scapular dyskinesis when it comes to shoulder pain.
Good luck with
You're
that.
You're not presenting the cure then? That's why it's the last.
No, I'm going to leave the cures for later on, but no, definitely not doing the cure for scapular dyskinesis. I'm going to hopefully just try to get some pragmatic, rational views about scapular dyskinesis, what it is, and when we need to think about it and when we don't need to think about it, which is pretty much most of the time. When was the last time anybody of you lot looked or thought about what your scapulars were doing? No. I ask this of physios all the time. Every time they come across, when was the last time you actually considered, wonder what my scapula's doing? And every physio goes, no, I haven't thought about it. And I go, exactly. Nobody needs to fucking know what their scapulars are doing. Not even patients need to know what their scapulars are doing.
I adore that logic. It makes absolutely no sense. I haven't thought about what my knee's doing. I haven't thought about what my jaw's doing. I haven't thought about what my back's doing. But somehow you've made that, in your head, that's a mic drop moment, because I love that. That's brilliant. Why you having the final word on anything terrifies me. But are you genuinely wanting to try to come to your own personal conclusions and say, well, you personally are going to draw a line under talking about this stuff?
I'm hoping that I don't get asked to do another talk on scapular dyskinesis after this one. Yeah, I'm hoping that it's going to be the last time I have to talk about it. I am bored of it. I am really bored of reading about it. I'm bored of the research around it. I'm bored of say, having these discussions around it. So I am hoping that this is the last time I actually have to do it.
Now, one of the things that I want to admit to is that it's always fair for us to admit our faults and failures, but you were first up this time last year for Therapy Live. You were one of the first speakers, and that was when everyone turned up. So over 20,000 people turned up, and we didn't expect that, and it crashed the entire site. So you ended up presenting to no one for your first round, right?
Just to poor old Matt. Poor old Matt had to listen to it all on his own. Yeah.
Matt got a solo audience performance, right? Now, the reason I'm bringing that up is because I wanted to make sure that we were clear that even within a few hours, we got you back on to great public appeal. So we fixed it within a few hours. And then since then, we've done nothing but improve the system. So I hope, even though I've not prepped you for this, you can vouch for the fact that Therapy Live has been nothing but plain sailing since. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even when you have technical problems, you are still able to deal with them. So I was impressed the fact that, within 2 or 3 hours, you managed to sort it out and get it sort of rescheduled and get me doing it again. I just need to obviously make sure I double my fee for next time, just in case that happens again. I have to do it twice the work.
Yeah, well, let's talk about it happens again. I mean, that was giving me kittens on the day, but yeah, I'm glad we can mention that. You know, I'm not going to pretend that, of course, it was difficult first couple of hours on that first one, but it stabilized things, and since then we've tidied everything up. For those that have seen therapy-live.co.uk, it's our own native bespoke platform now. And so we can have more creative control over it, as well as a little more control over some of the technical behind the scenes stuff. And so, yeah, nothing but plain sailing since. Another couple of reasons why we've done those sub shows in the meantime. And so we are confident that although it's big, it's scary, and I'm not going to pretend it doesn't mean that the nerves, I'm not saying the nerves have completely abetted, but we have stabilized things much more since. But yeah, thanks for joining us again, Meekins. Really appreciate that.
No worries.
Now, Susie, you've been involved in the design and build of one of our exciting new streams. We've got an advanced practice stream in partnership with the APPN. And one of the reasons it's especially exciting is because it's a set of really complex clinical reasoning panels and a lot of diversity of content and style and format. So tell me a little bit about how that's all come together, and also a little bit about yourself, if you would.
Yeah, thanks. Hello. First of all, I keep getting attacked by kittens myself. So they keep making an appearance. One's just stuck his head in my glass of water. So I apologise. So yeah, my name's Susie McElroy. I'm a physio at King's College Hospital in London, and I've just started my PhD at King's College London. And I have to give a big shout out to, I've got a fellowship through the Dunhill Medical Trust, which is a great charity that supports research into the care of older people. So I just want to thank them for funding my research into walking after surgery for spinal stenosis. So that's my current favorite topic, but I'm also heavily involved with the Advanced Practice Physiotherapy Network, the APPN. And so we're delighted that we've got this stream with TherapyLive, be our first time trying to sort of get involved here. And we've got some fantastic sessions. So we've really focused on clinical reasoning and advanced clinical reasoning. So we have panel discussions talking through how they make their decisions, what they're worried about, would they use investigations, would they not, how would they manage? And we're coming from that from different perspectives. So be advanced practice physiotherapists, be GPs, surgeons, rheumatologists, so that we're trying to understand everyone's different influences and where they sit and how they think, really, so that hopefully it will really give some sort of gems and nuggets for the audience. So really excited about those. And then we've got a couple of keynote speakers. We've got someone talking about vascular considerations, and then we got a fantastic talk on gout and its presentation and management for MSK physios. And then we've also got one about artificial intelligence and AI versus humans, with all the use of apps and AI for decision making and clinical reasoning. We've also got a debate and a panel looking at that and when we should be using AI in our practice. So we've got a huge breadth of different talks, and I apologize for everyone that I've missed out. I think we've got ones on radiology, ultrasound, injections, the use of plain x-rays, and I think that's all of our talks. Jack, you seem to be nodding. I haven't left anyone out, have I?
No, I think you covered all of them. I just want to interject, and when you were introducing yourself then, Susie, a part of me was like, she's going to say she's doing a PhD in scapular dyskinesia in a second, and this is going to be a horrible promo moment.
It'd be the effects of the menopause on dyskinesia and patella femoral pain. That'd have been she'd have circumnavigated the rest of the guests. I can't believe this. I don't know if this. I assume he was invited, but I'm about to just let Derek Griffin in to join the party. Dell's joining us. I didn't know that he was due, so that's good. So hopefully Derek can join the stream. Derek, you're live on the newscast in a second when your audio kicks in. So we'll come to you in a second. But thanks for joining. Last but no means least, Claire Robertson. You were on the TherapyLive Sport, and you did a brilliant double act with your husband Jonathan Bell, a really interesting piece of content that has then inspired various different things across the streams, including an orthopedic stream at this show. But you've also got two talks, one as a panelist and then one as a keynote on the Lower Lymposium. Now, I want to mention that word lymposium because Meakin sort of did a video piece to camera earlier today and called it lower limb stream because he's being boring and stuff. He really bottled it. But I'm proud of that pun, so I want to double down on it. So in the lower lymposium, Claire, there's you and many others that are returning to Therapy Live. What have you got in store for us?
Well, of course, it had to be something located around the front of the knee, clearly. So I thought I would do something on my new favorite topic, the Patella Fat Pad. Because actually the literature that's coming through on this is just fascinating, and it's really diverse literature. So of course there's the sort of biomechanical literature, but also there's a lot of immunological literature, which is quite hard going to read. So hopefully I can sort of simplify that and delve into some really quirky, interesting things. And actually, when you start looking at the fat pad, it changes how you look at osteoarthritis of the knee completely. Yeah. So I'm hoping to have a few people that listen and sort of sit back and think, okay, right, that's really changing the way I'm going to approach the next osteoarthritic knee I see. So it's it's full of intrigue, and I'm hoping to do a quick sort of whistle stop tour around what it is, what can go wrong, what we can do about it, and as I say, get people scratching their heads and thinking a bit differently as well.
Well, definitely, it certainly piqued my interest at that, because I think that sometimes there are certain issues in which I think we sometimes become complacent. I think, you know, although they're complex conditions, OA knee and say persistent low back pain and things, sometimes that's where even those that purport to aspire to individualized patient care, sometimes that's where the cookie cutters come out, right? The common pathologies, and sometimes we start to get into a bit more of the mundane and people don't individualize care as much, whereas some of the emergent research in and around that area is meaning that it's sort of throwing things off and becoming, you know, it's opening up other options again. So it's really interesting. Looking forward to that for sure. In terms of other things you might be interested in, I know that you won't be looking beyond the lower limb and the kneecap, no doubt, but I just wondered.
When Adam was saying about scapula, whatever it was, I was like, I can just about remember what a scapula is.
So can I.
Yeah, you probably know that you're no less bothered about it than he is. Yeah.
I know, exactly. Sounds like it doesn't matter that I can hardly remember what it does.
Yeah. Anyone else you're looking forward to hearing from?
Yeah, I mean, I think actually there's not just me that's interested in the emerging literature and changes around the management of osteoarthritis. And on the orthopedic stream, there's some, oh God, I shouldn't have said that, should I? The lymposium.
Oh, yeah, you can. Lymposium, sorry, yeah. There's some really interesting stuff coming through, like Mike McNicholas. He's a surgeon that's looking at surgical options for offloading the medial compartment, and he's doing a double act with a physio who's looking at non-op options for offloading. And then there's Kira Stevenson from Northern Ireland, who's going to be looking at the meniscus in more depth. When would we repair it? Can we repair it? How does this affect longitudinally what it's doing? So really, I guess, looking at osteoarthritis and perhaps these slightly earlier stages of the pathway, and, you know, and where is this going in terms of biologics, that kind of thing as well. So I think that's where I'm going to be listening. That's one of the things I'm most excited for, I think, because we did it so quickly last year. I was proud of that conference, don't get me wrong, but we had to really narrowly constrain the parameters of the format, right? So the keynotes, it was like, can you deliver this like this? And it was sort of one person piece to camera. And so this time, the variety of different styles with panels and obviously APPN leading the way a lot on that with the interest in different types of content and quizzes and stuff. But then on the orthopedic stream, it really does seem there's a real nice mixed balance there of surgeons, therapists, really opening things back up and saying, look, we need to integrate these things more carefully. And that's one of the things we're really pleased with Therapy Live again, is that we kind of, it really is, it's not MDT because we're forcing it in there. It's like generally, who are the best people to speak to these topics? And lo and behold, it's a wide range of different professionals of different backgrounds that are then coming together to aspire to best evidence-informed practice. So it's been really cool to see the program emerge. So Derek, thanks for joining us. Really glad you could make it. Tell us a little bit about what you've got in store, because you're another veteran of Therapy Live, aren't you, mate?
Yeah, so delighted to be back again this year, and sorry for being late to the discussion this evening. It slipped my mind. So this year I'm going to talk about a slightly different topic, I suppose, that I'm used to talking about. So I'm normally associated with low back pain in some shape or form. But I suppose in the last number of years, I've had much more contact with patients via rheumatology, and there's a huge overlap in terms of the pain science that's emerging in the rheumatology field and in the broader general musculoskeletal areas. And I suppose I'm going to look at the various pain mechanisms that underpin pain in people with inflammatory disease. And despite inflammation playing obviously a crucial role in the disease process, a bit like in the broader musculoskeletal literature, where we can have people within a lot of pain and it doesn't correlate with a very clear structural or a biomechanical cause. We see people with very, very well controlled inflammatory disease based on blood markers and disease measures, but yet have a persistent pain phenotype. And I think the literature around that is emerging, that while inflammation does play a significant role, it's not the whole picture. And then that clearly has implications for how we go about managing these people, that it's not enough just to put them on a biologic and expect that to fully resolve the pain in many cases.
Now, I mentioned on Twitter a few weeks back when you were announced as a speaker under this topic, it was such a good example of what we try to aspire to with the program design, as well as the caliber of speakers that we try to work with, is that instead of it being what I'm most known for talking to and about, and it being where have I got those slides available, it's you flexing your knowledge and your background and experience, both as an educator and a clinician working in that space. What is it that you've encountered clinically that challenges that, or that people might think flies in the face of your typical narratives, instead trying to integrate those things? Is that something we're forcing you into, or is it something that you revel in the challenge of doing something slightly different?
No, I think, like I said, it's developed over the last number of years. When I change roles, I'm now working in a secondary care setting, so I work alongside two rheumatologists, and hence a lot of my caseload have established inflammatory disease, and that obviously has made me more interested in that, simply because I'm exposed to it more. And it's quite remarkable that you have somebody with a very clear biological disease process at play, and thankfully, for example, the drug management now is much better for people with inflammatory disease, but yet we have this group of people that still have ongoing pain despite having very well-controlled disease, and this mirrors, I suppose, my previous experiences around the broader MSK population. And even when there is a very active disease process at play, it really goes to show the importance of a multidisciplinary or a multidimensional framework that we need to apply to these people, and not simply, I suppose, dismiss the pain as being purely inflammatory, or that because they have a specific label that we can assume that we can change their pain simply by treating the underlying disease process. So I think there's a lot of valuable learning points from having had contact with this patient cohort that I can kind of take into the broader MSK populations.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly simple for me to join the dots. If you think about the sort of systemic circumstances that we're starting to learn from a lot of the basic science, as well as the applied literature, from, say, menopause to, you mentioned cytokines, etc., at the Hoffer's Fat Pad. We also think that the advanced practice stream is certainly going to be visiting a lot of the complex reasoning that can sometimes be murky waters, and of course the scapula is irrelevant. So really all of you are very much involved, and I can circumnavigate all of you that are on this stream. Now, Derek, thank you for being a credible and smart thinker that is thinking in a rheumatological direction, because I just know of no one that's ever spoken any sense in the MSK space there. Jack March, you don't know of anyone that does any rheumatology or physio work, do you?
Well, other than Derek, no.
So Jim, I will come back to you about program design, because you are mainly like full-time spreadsheet wrangler, but you also moonlight as a physio, and you're once again on the lineup. But this time you're being brave as well. You're talking on the pediatric stream, I understand.
Yeah, well, if you're designing a 100-talk conference and you don't put yourself in it, then I think you've missed a trick, to be honest. I didn't speak at the pelvic health conference. Or did I?
Yes,
yeah, I did. I didn't speak at the sport conference. I didn't speak of the sport conference.
Rhiannon sounds traumatized. She must have attended your talk. Yeah, you didn't. It was rubbish. That's what she's saying.
I didn't get as good feedback as Rhiannon did, for sure.
No one did. No.
Yeah, so pelvic health is a good example, actually. So in each show, what we've tried to do, or each of the larger shows, we've tried to incorporate something where we've not expanded MSK, because that's not the right term, but we've incorporated things into what we might see in MSK practice. So in the first show, we had a whole stream on pelvic health, and the feedback we got from that was, great that you included pelvic health, but why was it not integrated across the program? So what we've tried to do this time is we then ran the pelvic health show, which was the plan anyway, and then we've tried to integrate pelvic health across the show, and Rhiannon's talk is a prime example of that. So this time we wanted to repeat the model, but we're going to incorporate pediatrics, and then anybody that can imagine what might happen in March 2022 can, if you can join those dots. So we've incorporated the pediatric stream, lots of physios obviously see under 18s, etc. So we've got some really cool talks. We've got Mike James talking about endurance, and Di Riding from some football team in Manchester is going to talk about young athletes. We've got weight training, cardiac risk, and I'm going to talk about juvenile idiopathic arthritis, which I should probably learn about before trying to talk about. But yeah, so we've really tried to be adventurous with that program for this as well, to broaden people's options. I don't feel like we should have to go to specialist conferences and only speak about one thing, or only listen about one thing and then go find another one. If we can have those options so people can challenge themselves, or challenge their options they have to listen to, then I think that's a good idea. And of course, then not talk about the scapula.
It's quite daunting for many under 18s, you know, trying to apply MSK principles, but also bearing in mind that children aren't just little adults. They've got very relevantly different physiology and often anatomy. But when it comes to inflammatory factors and things like that, then that particularly is where I would be opting out. You know, how applicable are wider rheumatological principles and your obvious expertise across the piece in adult, how applicable are they into juvenile idiopathic arthritis?
Well, more than I anticipated, actually, so hence me doing the talk. So it turned out, I thought it was really, really complicated and difficult, and it turns out it's actually slightly simpler to translate the information across. So I say I'm challenging myself, and we can carry on with that narrative, but actually I'm just probably going to regurgitate a lot of what people have heard before from me if they've ever attended one of my talks, just in small people.
Well, what a brilliant buzzkill. Thanks, Jim, for that brilliant advert for this show that you're involved in. It's completely taken the wind out of my sails. Thanks for that. So I'm going to come back to you all to get those of you I didn't ask as to who it is you know, other talks that you might be interested in. But here's the spoiler as promised. For those that are tuning in live, or those that are getting this after the fact on the podcast and stuff, find it on Facebook. But by then, you will be able to see that we will have shared the program in full. But hopefully, a click of a couple of buttons and I can get this side-by-side 10-stream agenda up on screen. Is that showing? Here's a thumbs up if so, then, gang. Yeah? Okay. So we're not going to go through every one of the 100 sessions, but as you can see,
8:30 in the morning. I've got to get up at 8:30 in the morning to do my talk.
Putting you on first again, mate. Look, but this time, as you will notice, you've got the opening session means that we then iron out any minor tech glitches in that first half hour. But yes, as you notice, there's Meekins talking about scapula, which he obviously loves. But even just at a glance, if you look at who's involved in those sessions, it's going to be really difficult to pick as to where you go. But look, upper lymposium, lower lymposium, spinal, core skills, pain, public health, pediatrics, advanced practice with the APPN. You've got MSK, I've got a stream for thinking in public, which I'll talk about in a little while. And then orthopedics has been described by Claire. So here's at a glance. You've got a full stacked 3 sessions, some of which panels, some of which interviews, some of them keynotes, morning break, followed by 2 further sessions. Again, looking at a glance over here, Andrew Cuff, Thomas Deckers, Claire Minchell, Nick Grantham, Rhiannon, another different Rhiannon. I said the wrong name there. But you've got things like overcoming long COVID in the public health stream, obviously very topical. You've also got sessions like this with Michael Schumacher on health tech and some other business-related content with Andy Hosgood later in the day. Ian Horsley, Dylan Morrissey. 3 sessions then after lunch. Don't think you're going to be able to watch them all, guys. I think that's one thing to say. But interesting panels like this in the core skills stream. So Obi Hassan, Joe Turner, Andy Hosgood talking about financial health. I think it's going to be really interesting in many ways, because those 3 thinkers are going to be able to apply that in business and professional terms, but also just personally. You know, that's one of the things we don't always think about. And if we were doing a, say, 20 or 30 session conference, you might just think we'd concentrate on really obvious, say, clinical or operational entities. Whereas this program's allowed us to sort of think more broadly about what are the other factors that are affecting people right now? What are the workforce going through? And as Rhiannon mentioned earlier, you know, those are things that get overlooked, and those big picture variables sometimes get missed. So as you can see, albeit at a glance for now, this will be going live, if not tonight, then tomorrow. And so here's your first look at the TherapyLive program for 2021. And so 10 simultaneous streams, 100 sessions of education. So although you might not have been able to make note quick enough, for those I haven't come to yet, Meekins will come to you first. Who is it you're looking forward to hearing from?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's always got to be Joe Gibson. So I think, you know, whenever Joe has a talk on something, I'm keen to go and listen to that, because she is fabulous and a great speaker, and learn a lot from her in my area of interest. And then I think I might sort of dip in over into the pain in the arse as well with old sports medicine doc, and see how that is going to play out, because that seems to be quite a topical area, getting the old buttock pain, what the cause of that is, and how we can diagnose it and how we can manage it. So yeah, looking forward to that one.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, complex sort of differential diagnosis in and around that area is always a bit of a murky one, messy one. We sometimes hide from it. And so, yeah, pleased that James Stokes is joining us for that. Another really popular session at our last, at our pelvic health event, in fact. Susie, I'll come to you then. And you're not allowed to name one of the APPN sessions for this, but any others that have drawn your eye?
Well, it's going to sound like I'm copying Adam here, but the buttock pain and so forth, I think is going to be fascinating. So I want to hear about that. And then I have to say, I was one of the people that couldn't get onto Adam's talk last year. So, and if he's promising that this will be the last talk I ever have to hear about, you know, scapulas, then, you know, that's a pretty big sell. So, you know, it's gonna be hard push to beat that. Okay. I have to say.
Yeah, you'll be there for the final scapular mic drop from me.
But then I'm also just, you know, our core skills. I think you can't go wrong with looking at those core skills. And then public health. In fact, I can't really make my mind up.
She's just going to
slightly indecisive. You might. So yeah, I'm open to be persuaded, but I don't think I've got enough days to watch it all.
Yeah, well, obviously, I'll explain a bit about that. If you're looking at this, any of you, and thinking I'm not going to be able to consume all of that, then yeah, I doubt you will. I'm taking some serious multi-screen action, but fortunately, yes, all the recordings will be made available at physio-matters.com, and so you can access those, especially at a significant discount. From what I recall, even without the discount, it's like, am I right in thinking it's like 70p or something a session or something? It's like ridiculous. So yeah, if you are worried about not being able to see what you want to see, then yeah, we'll be making them available as quickly as possible afterwards and recording all the content, because we hate educational wastage. Funnily enough, that's how TherapyLive was born, really, is looking on when the pandemic hit and struck, and all the content that we and others had prepared for events and stuff. It was in fear of that going to waste and missing that opportunity that we then brought that together and recorded it and tried to flex into virtual. I will announce now that TherapyLive, there's nothing constrains it to virtual. We will be integrating in-person features as soon as it is sensible for us to do so, and so that's definitely in our future. You know, there's absolutely no reason, much like integrated MSK practice should be, you know, virtual where appropriate, in person where appropriate, and have the best of both worlds in many ways clinically. I see no reason why education can't be the same, and so we will be trying to make sure we do that, and it won't be that we're just going to be wash, rinse, repeating this even when we're not stuck behind screens. Let's get together and have beers in person when possible.
I still wear my pajamas though.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's considering what you usually wear to conferences, mate, that would be an improvement. So I'd be happy with that. Rhiannon, I really want to pick your brain a little bit as to, as a pelvic health specialist, a conference like this, is there something there for you also?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested, like pelvic pain is kind of like a big factor of kind of like my caseload. So the pain stream looks really interesting just from, and it's amazing just how much little bits of knowledge you get just from picking, little bits of conferences and, snippets here and there that's just so transferable. That it doesn't really matter if it's your core area, that you can really transfer some of those skills and stuff that you hear. So really interested in the lived experiences. Talk that looks fantastic, just because we really should be talking about our patients and what their understanding is and how they're living through stuff to really help form our treatments and our guidance and our kind of like policies and how we manage stuff as well. And as well, I'm quite interested in just the learning disability side of stuff as well. It's not an area I know particularly a lot about. And is that my fault? Should there be more people with learning disabilities kind of like possibly coming through to pelvic health? Is it something that we're missing? Are we not engaging with that kind of like with that population in some way? And is there a way that I can kind of like start looking at that a little bit more? So that'll be interesting as well.
Yeah, brilliant. I think it's a really good point. Alistair Beverley, the LD physio, is going to be joining us. He's present on, again, a panel about access, but also his own keynote. And one of the things that Alistair does brilliantly is explaining some of the principles, such as the higher end and more complex forms of communication and how applicable they are. It's to the wider MSK environment, as well as then some of the specifics of what we should be doing to better serve that population as generalists, and tapping into people like him as specialists to help us do that. And so, yeah, I'm really pleased you've noted that, and definitely worth us highlighting. Other sessions of note that are certainly specialised. We've got Liz Bailey, who's been making a lot of noise on social media about her session about returning to dance. We originally put her into the paediatrics session, and she was mortified at that. She's like, no, over 18s, please. So she's doing a session in the Lower Lymposium on that, regarding the sort of return to dance principles that she's sort of famed for these days, and various other aspects that we've got across the programme. Now, I wanted to mention the MSKR stream. MSKR Thinking in Public is obviously based on our think tank, MSK Reform, of which is advocating for progressive policy reforms within MSK practice, and has been working hard behind the scenes, been obviously very challenging for a lot of non-profits since the pandemic hit. And so it's been interesting for us to be beavering away in the background, working on some of the policy manifesto policies that we proposed not long before the pandemic hit. Now, there's some really interesting work to be presented there. So if you're someone that is aspiring for better clinical governance, educational reform, looking at various different parts of even media influence work. So Ash James has got a panel on how we can push back against sort of nonsense concepts in new media. So you watch demoralizing times where something goes viral, where backcracking on Lad Bible gets millions and millions of hits. Like, how are we countering that narrative that there's this curative therapies that are out there? How do we try and change things and put interesting counter narratives out there? As well as then some great work that we're going to be announcing, that we've got PROMs and PREMS work that's coming out from MSK Reform, as well as service evaluation changes that we think will help to set the foundations better across MSK practice. And so it's great, some great updates there for all clinicians, but especially those that are into the operations and management and policy agendas. So please do check those out. There's definitely something for everyone across there, as well as I'll be interviewing Karen Middleton about the future of MSK practice and how she sees it, which is the 5-year anniversary of when she came on Physio Matters. And interestingly, in which that interview, it came up that we weren't suggesting that we should wait 5 years for some of those changes. And so let's see where we're up to at that stage then. So what I want to do is just bring it over to you, Jim, because I've got to ask you the same question. You've built all this, you've been moving things around spreadsheets, you've been agonizing over timeframes and making sure that things don't clash. What are you most looking forward to if you weren't going to be beavering away behind the scenes and speaking and moderating in various different places? What do you think you'd be making sure you attended?
Well, I've moved my own talk so I don't clash with Derek, so that I can moderate Derek's session, because as he alluded to, you always ask me what do I want on these on these shows, and we build them together, and I try and force some of my rheumatology stuff in there because I've got that power to do so, and it's something that I've been trying to get Derek to do, or trying to arrange with Derek for a while, to talk about the pain specifically in inflammatory diseases. And I think that, as Derek alluded to, there's things to be learned from both sides. So how persistent musculoskeletal pain is managed can be really helpful in the rheumatology setting, and I think we can learn a lot from the rheumatology setting into persistent pain in MSK as well, and the two-way interaction. So really looking forward to that. I missed Rhiannon's talk at the previous show and had to watch the recording, so I'm going to try and get to Rhiannon's talk live. I really want to get
not to heckle. I hope you're going to be able.
I've got to bring down her feedback, so mark her as a 1 at the end, so that I can try and get my scores higher. And then I really want to get to Claire's talk as well about the fat pad and how that interacts with osteoarthritis, because that's something I've been trying to do a lot of work on recently, is understand osteoarthritis better. So if Claire's got insights into that, then I'm all over that talk as well.
Yeah, it's just that's too obvious. I would say you're sucking up to the people that are on the newscast, but then again, you did decide who came on the newscast, so it's like a confounding variable.
My web is all encompassing.
These are your favourites. I was gonna
apart from Meekins, you made me. I invite him.
Yeah, you were my pick, Adam. You were my pick. So yeah, thank you all so much. I want to just wrap up by going round our little virtual room, if I can. And I promise this isn't a loaded question, so you can answer it completely as you see fit. But I wanted to ask a little bit about what your take is on say TherapyLive virtual conferences, and this hopefully being a somewhat conclusion to this phase in which that's been our only option, really. As we start to try to emerge into a bit more normality. What is it about, say, TherapyLive and the medium, should we say, that you've enjoyed, and what is it you're looking forward to seeing the back of as the world gets back to some form of normal? So, Adam, can I come to you first on that?
Yeah, you can do, mate. I think online learning has been, say, during these times, a godsend. It's allowed us to obviously carry on doing things that we would otherwise not be able to do. And long may it hopefully carry on even when we return back into some form of normality, when things do hopefully go back to normal, because there are so many positives and benefits about online conferences, online education, that I think that, it's to be continued on, hopefully. I think there was a lot of reluctance initially because obviously, people were not used to it, and there was all that sort of, change isn't going to be well received and all that sort of business. But I found that this COVID crisis has allowed us to learn that there's other ways of doing things, and it isn't as challenging or as hard or as negative, I think, as many people think, and that includes online education. So yeah, long may it continue, because I just want to carry on doing talks in my pajama bottoms in my spare bedroom, rather than having to travel down onto public transport into cities with lots of smelly people in smelly positions, and drinking bad coffee and having bad croissants in conference centres. So long may it continue.
For the sake of the people that you have to encounter on those travels, I agree with you. And you can stay in your spare room in your pajamas for the rest of us as well. That's fine, mate. Claire, I'll do the same question to contestant number 2, please. What are your sort of thoughts on the landscape as it's been?
Yeah, well, I think I would go a step further really over TherapyLive and say, yes, it is great that the culture has become more, the online's more accessible, but I think there's almost been too much jumping on the bandwagon, and there's a lot of very average webinars around and about, and I think what you've got here, and you haven't paid me to say this, you've got an amazing lineup of really top-notch people who are not only top of their game, but then pushing themselves out of their comfort zone to perhaps talk about something that's just a bit edgy or a bit, there aren't necessarily definitive answers. And for me, that makes a really interesting education, because it's what's emerging and, what can you listen to and then think about and maybe look out for going forward. So for me, I think that's what makes this conference a bit different, is the level of quality and the edginess of some of the talks.
No, I really, really appreciate that. And yeah, we definitely didn't pay her to
pay
say
me
that.
up. Fine.
Yeah. Susie, you as the APPN, you've been really involved in all sorts of interesting innovations whilst the pandemic's been happening. You guys are very involved in helping people through with the roadmap, etc., and doing a lot of webinar work yourself. What are your reflections on online learning, and also why you guys have decided to join us on TherapyLive?
Well, I'm hoping that with the number of webinars we've put out, Claire's not referring to our ones about mediocre.
No, of course not.
So I think it's been great. I think it's been fantastic that there are webinars, that there are days like this where you don't have to travel, that you can get some quality education. And you're right, we've done lots of teaching about the FCP roadmaps and supervision, and that has gone far better than we thought it would do by doing it, having an interactive teaching course on Zoom platforms or so forth. However, I miss being in person. I think a blended approach probably is required as we move out of this. Maybe I just like talking to people too much. I'm quite keen on not just the educational side of things, but the networking, the talking over the bag coffee, complaining about the soft croissants. I think that also adds a huge amount. So going forward, I'd like to see a variety of options. And I also would like to see maybe less evening webinars. I know that they are always optional, but I think with all of these things, there seems to be, and we're doing one now, but I don't mean about now, but
this one
there seems to be more and more of these.
No.
There's more and more of them in the evening, and we all should have allocated CPD time, study leave, so forth, that we should be able to access. And if webinars are good and they're not mediocre, we should be able to access our leave and our training time for these courses. And so that's my concern about some of the online events.
I think it's a good point generally as well, isn't it? The fact that we've not been necessarily leaving home as much to go to the office or to work or to the hospital or what have you, is that there has been that blurring. Sometimes, yes, these things can be great because they're accessible, but also those distinctions can mean that we end up blurring the lines in a bad way and burning the candle at both ends and overindulging sometimes, as well as then, proliferation of all varieties of quality. I think it's a really interesting point. I agree. I want that blended approach. I don't know what the perfect sweet spot and balance would be, but certainly, Meekins will be upset for me saying this, but I just want to give you all a big hug and stuff. Consensual, of course, but especially just actually have some contact again. That'd be lovely. Rhiannon, I want to come to you on the same question then, and we're getting some cracking and varied answers on it. So what's your take on the matter?
Yeah, well, I've actually made myself a mid-year resolution, which is to not sign up for any webinars that I'm not actually going to watch at the time that webinar is, because you just haven't got time to watch it all. And if you haven't got time to watch it at the time that it's on, then chances are you're never going to catch up with it. So yeah, I think it's the blended approach. I think is definitely the way forward. I mean, for me, I miss people. It's those conversations over coffee, or the bumping into someone you haven't seen for years, or you just don't get that. You click off and you're sat on your own in your living room, kind of like going, okay, that was good. Okay, and then moving on. So I think, definitely being back to a blended face-to-face virtual for whoever wants. If people like to be there, then that's fantastic. If people prefer to be at home or they can't make it, then that's fantastic. But I think what the virtual has definitely allowed us is to have like international speakers, which probably wouldn't have turned up for a 20-minute talk, previously at a day's conference. So I think, it's fantastic.
Talking of international speakers, Derek Griffin, all the way from Ireland. How's it been minimising your travel?
Yeah, well, I think one of the big benefits of the virtual stuff is that under normal circumstances, if I were to go to a conference, I'd pick a conference that's typically in something that I suppose that an area that I work in all the time, so that would suit my biases. And you often end up hearing the same speaker speak at 5 different conferences, and it's really it's really the same information. Whereas in the last number of months, I'm more likely to sign up to a webinar maybe of an area that interests me, but wouldn't be something that I would see every day in the clinic. So I actually think it provides a perfect opportunity to expand the skill set beyond the traditional conferences, or where you're going to go to the keynote address that most matches the types of patients that you see. Whereas I've kind of, in the last number of weeks and months, kind of looked at other areas that I need to that would be useful to develop. And at least if you don't see a lot of that patient cohort or see a particular type of condition, that it's all, you always pick up relevant information that's transferable across. And now that I'm in a hospital setting, I see a lot more. I even see a lot more red flag stuff. I see a lot more medical stuff, a lot of different types of comorbidity, and the more knowledge I have on that, the better. So I think it has allowed me to broaden my horizons more than if I was traveling specifically to a conference.
I think there's something to be said for that as well. It just feels like a less of an opportunity cost to then flirt with a slightly adjacent topic. You know, it's that, you know, even if you were to big multi-room conference, you do stay in your lane, and sometimes that is even the basic logistics of it being at the other side of the conference center makes you then stick rather than twist. Whereas hopefully that access and that cross-pollination across streams and stuff that we've tried to achieve, we've hopefully then, you know, make sure that then these mixed approaches that speak, yes it's MSK centric, but you know, as we're hopefully proving with public health, pelvic health, pediatrics, orthopedics, we're trying to recognize that all of these things touch our patients' lives, and therefore we should upskill in that direction. And really at the heart of it is that we're trying to promote reasoning over recipes and sensible patient-centered, evidence-informed care that realistically, like we've all got a vested interest in that, and we can therefore speak that similar language, hopefully be a bit braver, as has been mentioned. And yeah, I certainly agree with a lot of what's been said there. Jim, I want to give you the final word. Congratulations on this program, mate. And I know you've been working and continue to work really hard on this. What are you most excited about, worried about, and proud of?
Well, I'm responsible for having made the thing, so it always stresses me out significantly that none of it's going to work. So there's always that concern. I am mostly excited that we've filled 10 streams of content, and there'll just be that much choice for everybody that I really like. It sounds like it's like, I don't know, silly, but it really gives me a good feeling that we've put together a good program. When people put on Twitter or whatever that they've got to make a choice between 3, 4, 5 different speakers, like it's not a barn door choice that there's the only person I'm going to listen to at that time is so and so, the only person I'm going to listen. I want people to make a choice, and as Derek said, I want people to have the choice where they can go out a little bit away from their lane and take a bit of a risk for someone they've not heard before, or a topic they don't usually have, and things like being able to put Alistair Beverley up to talk about learning disabilities and difficult topics within an MSK setting, where even when we've done our smaller shows, the TherapyLive Sport, even pelvic health, when you're limited, you just can't, you know, if you only have really niche topics or really challenging topics, then it's hard to encourage the whole crowd. So being able to do that is really good. And I think hopefully everybody agrees, but I think we've managed to strike quite a nice balance across the board of different topics, different speakers, different backgrounds, different specialisms, etc. So really excited about how the whole thing flows as well.
I think, and you know, to Claire's point about quality, I hope we have achieved that despite the quantity. You know, that's the thing. It's not. There's literally no fillers. We've got probably the original brainstorms like about 200 ideas. Sometimes you start with speakers, sometimes you start with topics, sometimes you start with panels, sometimes you start with like learning outcomes. There's a few different ways in which we do this, and it's been a long time in the making. So I hope people looking on at this program, especially, I think it'll be going live either tonight or tomorrow, are going to be able to see that there really is both the who's who of great thinkers and brave thinkers that's been mentioned tonight, but also that generally we want to proliferate important information so that for the betterment of patient care, and especially with the ability for us to then nest an MSKR thinking in public stream for those that want to then aspire to those sorts of policy level and high end operational topics, as well as some of the nitty gritty on clinical topics. It shouldn't ever be either or, because these things matter at various different parts of it, and various specialists and generalists alike need to be having that choice, really. And it's a shame sometimes how we end up in those silos. So long may that continue. Thank you so much, all of you, for your time, both tonight and of course at the show in 2 weeks' time. And I think hopefully I'll hit stop on a live stream and wave goodbye to you all, but really appreciate it. All the best. And that's that. Many thanks to my TherapyLive Newscast guests, Derek Griffin, Rhiannon Griffiths, Claire Robertson, Adam Meekins, Jack March and Susie McElroy. Really enjoyed that conversation. Hope you did too, and that you're all excited for what TherapyLive is going to bring. We've got interviews on that show as well. You know, there's some of you love the interview-based content, so I'll be having a discussion with Karen Middleton, Roger Kerry and Grania Donnelly. And there are other moderators that will then be going into the detail in a Physio Matters style. So TherapyLive is brought to you by clinical moderators, not administrative moderators. So your questions are channeled through the best and brightest of our interview team. And so you can rest assured that we're going to be bringing our critical lens to things, you know, our devil's advocacy that you know and love us for. So I'm really glad we've been able to sort of bring to life what the legacy of this podcast has done for digital education, and applying that to the events space has been really successful and popular, and we thank you for that, because it's your participation and your engagement that has made that happen. So really looking forward to it. Join us on June the 11th and go to therapy-live.co.uk/tickets if you haven't already. And all that's left from me is to say you've been listening to the Physio Matters podcast, discussing physio matters because physio matters. Bye for now.